Hi, Professor Stefero here, and this screencast focuses in on active transport. If you haven't watched the facilitated and active transport screencasts, do so first, then come back and watch this screencast. The next video will talk about active transport, and then I'll come back on the other side to go over it in a step-by-step way. All right, enjoy.
When substances need to be driven against their concentration gradient from low to high concentrations, active transport is required. This process uses energy to move a substance across the membrane using selective protein carriers. The sodium-potassium pump is a specialized membrane protein carrier, common in most animal cells, that moves sodium and potassium ions across the plasma membrane. ATP fuels the pump in the movement of these ions from low to high concentrations, moving sodium ions outside of the cell where they become concentrated and bringing potassium ions into the cell where their concentration is higher relative to the outside. In other instances of active transport, the concentration gradient created from the action of one pump can be used as the input of energy to drive a different pump, a process known as coupled transport. The large concentration gradient of sodium ions is used to bring glucose into the cell against its concentration gradient.
Okay, let's dig deeper and break down active transport step by step. The first is solute binding. In this case, the solute is the square, and it's going to be moving from inside the cell to outside of the cell. So the concentration in an active process is from low to high. So where is the concentration of the substance, the square, greater? It's outside of the cell. And active transport is going to move that solute, the square, from where it is low to where it is high. So transferring a phosphate from ATP to the transport protein energizes the carrier to change shape. And this is the second step. This process of energizing the protein is called phosphorylation. And that's a term I want you to remember, phosphorylation. This is ATP. The removal of a phosphate group from ATP is a hydrolysis reaction, and that reaction separates a phosphate group, makes what's called ADP, and that transfers energy to the carrier protein. When phosphorylation occurs, it results in a change in the shape of the transport protein, and that's the third step. That change in shape leads to transport, allowing the movement of the molecule against the concentration gradient. Lastly, the phosphate will release from the protein carrier, and that will change the shape of the protein again, changing the carrier to the original shape we saw in step 1. So active transport is important for a couple of reasons. First, it requires the expenditure of energy in the form of ATP. It alters the shape of the membrane protein through phosphorylation using ATP. It moves solutes from a low concentration to a high concentration by using transport proteins. Okay, see you later.